Hey, what's going on, gang? This is Nate on the Stone. Welcome back to my channel and to the 49th episode of The Rolling Stone. And as usual, we are just chock full to the brim of different stories that have taken place over the past week. And the very first story actually has to do, surprise, surprise, with the coronavirus, which is still making its merry way through the states and actually through the rest of the world. So, as of this recording, Congress, Senate, and the House has actually just passed, and President Trump just signed, a $2 trillion relief bill because of the coronavirus, right? A $2 trillion bill. It's the biggest one in the history of the United States. Okay, that has just been done. Now, of course, a lot of people have had their own opinions about it. Some people saying that, it's great, that it's not a bailout for anything, so it's totally different from what the second George Bush and Obama did during the Great Recession. Other people saying, that it's practically the worst thing that could have happened, basically showing again that conservatives and people on the right are hypocrites because, when a Democrat is in the White House, they would have ranted and raved at this, but because Trump, a Republican, is in the White House, they are embracing this with open arms. There are so many facets on that side of the question that, we could literally sit here for an hour talking about them. But that's not what this story is about, okay? Because this story is about what I want to talk about specifically is the fact that the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, okay, while the Senate was debating their bill, right, and the House was debating its own bill, right, they were having different versions of this coronavirus relief bill simultaneously, Nancy Pelosi proposed a second bill for the House of Representatives that was created, I think, solely by the Democratic members of the House. That was $2.5 trillion. Okay? Now, what a lot of people were pointing out and justifiably harping on was the fact that there was so much non-essentials in her bill. Okay, I'm just going to list a few of the things that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrat majority in the House of Representatives put into this version of the coronavirus relief bill, okay? For example, increased tax credits for wind and solar power. That was something that they put into their own version of the coronavirus relief bill. Something else. Money for the post office. Okay? According to Breitbart News, quote, Postal Service Fund for revenue foregone due to the coronavirus pandemic, $20 billion to remain available until September 30th, 2022, provided that such amount is designated by the Congress as being for an emergency requirement pursuant to Section 251B2A1 of the Balanced Budget and Emergency Deficit Control Act of 1985. Something else. Money for Planned Parenthood. Okay? According to the Daily Caller, quote, Speaking to the Daily Caller, those White House officials alleged that while negotiating the stimulus with U.S. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, Pelosi tried to lobby for several provisions that stalled bipartisan commitment to the effort. One was a mandate for up to $1 billion to reimburse laboratory claims, which White House officials say would set a precedent of health spending without protections outlined in the Hyde Amendment, unquote. Now, the Hyde Amendment, okay, it is the federal bill that actually forbids taxpayer money from going to fund abortions. Now, unfortunately, the Hyde Amendment is only a technicality because while Planned Parenthood and its apologists and other apologists just for the abortion industry in general, will say that, well, technically speaking, taxpayer money is not being used to pay for abortions, to fund abortions. There are actually several loopholes that Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers use, so that, yes, they still are using tax money to fund abortions. So that was something else that the Speaker of the House put into her coronavirus relief bill. Something else, requirements for federal and corporate gender and racial diversity data. Okay, voter harvesting, which actually allows you, so if you have a paper ballot, right, an absentee ballot that is mailed to you because you know that you're not going to be able to get to the polling station for whatever reason on election day, you can get a paper ballot mailed to you, and then you fill it out, and then you either have to deliver it before election day, right? Well, voter harvesting is when you fill out your absentee ballot and then someone else comes and picks up your ballot, picks up everybody's ballot who voted absentee in a particular area. Okay? Now, of course, a lot of people have said that this should be illegal. And in most of the country, it is illegal. California actually just recently legalized it. Okay? But there are tons of people who say that no, California should illegalize it again, like with the rest of the country, because it opens up, or it provides so many opportunities and potential for abuse and ballot stuffing. Okay, FYI, no democracy, no country that claims to be democratic, to have a democratic system of government, allows voter harvesting. Not even, the poor ones, the dysfunctional ones, they don't even allow voter harvesting. California does, and then this bill actually said that voter harvesting was going to be legalized nationwide. This is what it said specifically, quote, voter harvesting. It shall permit a voter to designate any person to return a voted and sealed absentee ballot to the post office, a ballot drop-off location, tribally designated building, or election office, so long as the person designated to return the ballot does not receive any form of compensation based on the number of ballots that the person has returned, and no individual, group, or organization provides compensation on this basis, and B, may not put any limit on how many voted and sealed absentee ballots any designated person can return to the post office, a ballot drop-off location, tribally designated building, or election office. Okay? It also, finally, last thing on the list, it provided $1 billion for sanctuary cities. Now, the good news, according to the Daily Signal, is that most of these things did not get into the final bill. Okay, now of course that means that some of them still did. Most of them, however, did not. Okay, so the natural reaction upon hearing that is to kind of wipe our brow and be like, whew, dodged a bullet, as they say. But honestly, I don't really think that we should be thinking that, oh, we dodged one. We're doing okay. They tried to pull a fast one on us, but we outsmarted them, right? We held true to the course, and we missed the danger, right? I don't think that we can say that. Why? For a couple of reasons. First and foremost, it is absolutely disgraceful. It is disgraceful that at a time of not just a national emergency, but of a global emergency, right? I mean, remember, this coronavirus, it is a global pandemic, meaning that it is, as of this point in time, it is still spreading around the whole world, right? So at a time of a global pandemic, a global emergency, it is disgraceful that our elected leaders are actually taking this time to push their own agenda, just like it's politics as usual. Nothing more and nothing less. In fact, if you want to know how bad it is, try this on for size. Yahoo News reported that Majority Whip James Clyburn, a Democrat from South Carolina, told the Democratic caucus members that the coronavirus relief bill was a, quote, tremendous opportunity to restructure things to fit our vision, unquote. Now Clyburn made these comments, okay, on a call featuring more than 200 House Democrats, during which caucus members laid out a list of provisions they wanted to be included in the Senate's $1 trillion package, unquote. Okay? I'll read that to you again, just so that it can sink in. The coronavirus and the coronavirus relief bill is, per Democrat Majority Whip James Clyburn, it is a, quote, tremendous opportunity to restructure things to fit our vision. This is straight out of Saul Alinsky's Rule for Radicals, right? You might not remember Saul Alinsky. There was a lot of talk about Saul Alinsky when President Obama was in the White House, and during the 2016 presidential election, because Hillary Clinton was an acolyte of Saul Alinsky. Saul Alinsky was, I believe he was a college professor, and he was also an activist, right? He is most famous for writing the book Rules for Radicals, okay? And one of his rules for radicals was never to allow a crisis to go to waste. Alinsky argued that every crisis, you should actually kind of freeze frame that crisis and then use that crisis to further your own agenda. You weave it into your narrative. You use it to say why your ideology is the one that's needed. And you use it to push the culture, push politics, push society more towards your vision of what you want it to be. Okay? What James Clyburn said, what Nancy Pelosi included in her bill, whether she succeeded or not, okay, and she did fail, FYI again, okay, that was Saul Alinsky's thought and his practices laid out in the real world, okay? This at a time, again, when people are dying, okay? As of this recording, again, over 1,000 people have died in Italy in one day, okay? People are dying all around the world from this coronavirus, and I know that some people are still saying that it's like the flu, and even the experts are now starting to say that, well, it's kind of like a really, really bad flu, which it might be, which still doesn't negate the fact, which has not yet been contradicted to my knowledge, that the coronavirus is more contagious and the mortality rate for it is higher than the last big major health scare that the United States had approximately 10 years ago, the swine flu, the H1N1 flu that originated in Mexico. Remember that? I'm sure you guys do, right? This coronavirus is more contagious and the mortality rate for it is higher than for the H1N1 swine flu of 2009, 2010, okay? So at this time, the fact that these politicians are just using it as an opportunity to push through their agenda, it's appalling. They should be thrown out of office, okay? But that leads to kind of another minor point. The fact that Nancy Pelosi, San Francisco, they're not going to vote Nancy Pelosi out of office. No, she's been in there forever and ever and ever. Amen. They're not going to vote her out, which just actually points out to the sadness of how much these constituents have been almost brainwashed. They don't mind being made pawns anymore. That's what they're used to. That's what this corrosive ideology and this corrosive idea of politics does to the human spirit and the human mind. Even when People are dying. People are still getting sick. People are saying, we need relief. We need a plan. We need this. We need this. We need this. Well, you know what? Let's gum the whole thing up by talking about diversity on corporation executive boards. Let's take this opportunity to get voter harvesting legalized throughout the entire country. That'll be great for our side. They should be thrown out of office again for it. But since they won't, it just points to the fact of how crushed we are. We don't mind being made pawns and being played as pawns anymore. Okay? Now, the second thing that this shows is the inability of Congress to do its job. Okay? Now, that might be that might be a little out of date now because, like I just said, as of this recording, the bill has been passed and signed. So it's like, yeah, Congress actually did do its job, right? Everything is fine and hunky-dory. Well, maybe it is and maybe it isn't, because think about this, okay? This bill of Nancy Pelosi's was 1,120 pages. Now compare that with the Homestead Act of 1863, which was, you want to know how many pages it was, gang? Take a wild guess at how many pages it was. Okay? Done? 3. The Homestead Act of 1863 was 3 pages long. Nancy Pelosi's a coronavirus relief bill, something that was supposed to be whipped up and passed to start helping people and businesses during this time, during this pandemic, 1,120 pages long. Okay? Now, this really, and one of the reasons why it was so big is because it had all of this pork in it. It had all of these special projects and all of the, and this whole wish list. And it really shows, okay, what this tells me is that this is antithetical to self-government, because it turns the people's government, remember, we're supposed to be a government of, by, and for the people, like Abraham Lincoln said in the Gettysburg Address. It turns the people's government into a bureaucratic playhouse. Okay, these bills are so big that more often than not, Congress, the members of Congress, don't have enough time to read them fully, to know what's in them. We the people, right? We the people who are going about our day-to-day work, right? We don't have time, to sit around in front of our computers every single day and then go on to, the House of Representatives website or the Senate's website and read these bills in toto to figure out everything about them. We've got families, we have jobs, we have hobbies, we have responsibilities and duties, right? So the fact that they know that they can put anything they want in these bills. They can amend it and twist it and turn it and add so many things, and no one will ever know, because these bills are so big and people's lives are so busy that they're never going to get caught, right? And furthermore, in addition to that, as if that wasn't bad enough, furthermore, this is a playhouse that, the people can't exercise any oversight into. It's bureaucratic, and which is the opposite of legislating. Bureaucracy is the opposite of legislating, and the people can't exercise any oversight into it, which means that Congress is just a wonderland for your own agenda, and the people and the common good be damned. And sooner or later, that is going to catch up with people. It's a thought that I've actually been having in the back of my head as this coronavirus pandemic has continued to unfold, and it reminded me something of what Mark Steyn, commentator extraordinaire, I believe, I referred to him in last Tuesday's video. Mark Steyn said once that The bad thing about America's healthcare system is that it's the worst of both worlds. It's not a completely nationalized system like Canada and the UK, but it's also not completely a private system either. It's the worst of both worlds. It's the worst of the private system, and it's the worst of the nationalized system, which basically means that, everyone hates it. This coronavirus pandemic has kind of showed the same thing about Congress, right? Because at the same time, it is not answerable and transparent for the people, right? It's too it's too bureaucratic. It's too fossilized. It's too big. It's too unwieldy, and it's almost like too powerful when you can add everything like this into it. It's way too powerful to do any good. But at the same time, it's not powerful. It's not centralized. It's not bureaucratic enough to actually just say, we're going to do this now, we're going to do this now, we're going to do this now, bing, bang, boom, right? It's kind of the worst of all possible worlds. It's not exactly a democratic Republican system, but at the same time, it's not exactly a top-down authoritarian system like China has under the Chinese Communist Party. It's the worst of both again. And more people possibly are waking up to that fact, because they're seeing it being played out in real time during an actual crisis, which is actually, for once, affecting normal people's lives again. I mean, I know that since 2001, we've been in a state of almost constant war in the Middle East, but that was something that most people could ignore. It didn't affect our everyday lives. This actually is. And so now people are seeing all the holes and flaws and chinks and everything in the system. And that is one of the big ones, that the government is not Republican and it's not authoritarian. It's the worst of both possible worlds. And when people start realizing that, you are in for a world of dangerous possibilities. It's definitely going to be something to keep a finger on, right? So we can keep, so we can gauge which way, what happens when more and more people realize that, and what happens when they actually do. But that is story number one.